Hey, if you got a Bible, we're going to jump into it. John chapter 5. It's such an honor to be able to be with you guys again today and just such a joy. But we're going to jump into John chapter 5 in just a moment. We'll look at that. So I do a lot of traveling, about 150, 200 flights a year. A few years ago, I was on a trip to Costa Rica. And I know Costa Rica sounds really awesome, but there's the really cool side of Costa Rica. Then there's kind of the third world side of Costa Rica. We were on the third world side of Costa Rica. And me and my friend, he's a pastor as well, and we were speaking at a bunch of different conferences and all this stuff, and we had one full day off the next day. It was like a Tuesday. We were done speaking a Tuesday night. We had the full day off and night the next day. And so we go up to the front desk. I'm like, hey, we got the full day off. And if you had the full day off in Costa Rica, what would you do? And the lady at the counter is like, oh, you should go zip lining. And you go zip lining to the Sarapiqui River. That's where they filmed Jurassic Park. And so I thought, wow, that's probably going to be really pretty. How many of you have ever zip lined before? Anybody here? Have you ever zip lined in a third world country? Totally different. They don't use cable, they use dental floss. It's different. But if you don't know what zip lining is, basically they take a cable, they hook it from one tree to the next tree over here, and then they put a little harness on you. You clip on, and then you kind of do a Tarzan thing, and you go here. Then you undo, and you stand on a platform. Then you hook up to the next cable, and you do it 16 different times on the way down. That's what zip lining is. But in Costa Rica, in the rainforest, there's ravines between the two trees, so there's times where you're 60 stories in the air with one cable and one little latch, and so it's kind of scary. So we wake up the next morning, and we signed up for the thing, and we wake up the next morning. There's a bus that picks us up, and it takes us all the way up 2 hours on a bus ride into the rainforest, and we are way into the rainforest, and there's only 5 of us on the bus, and it's funny because of these tour guides, and then there's 5 of us, and I'm thinking, they're going to kill us. This is like a scene from Criminal Minds. And so we go all the way up 2 hours. Then 1 hour you boat ride, and then 1 hour you horseback ride. That's how deep you are into the jungle. We finally arrive into this jungle area, and there's a hut there, and the guy puts the harness on you, make sure it fits, and he goes, okay, you go with him. It's time to start now. And I said, well, wait a minute. I go, don't we need to sign anything? And then he goes, for what? And I said, what happens if we fall and we die? He goes, I said, aren't you afraid of getting sued? He goes, oh, you Americans. And he says, if you die, we leave. That's what he said to me. And I'm like, well, that sounds safe. And so we start zip lining all the way down, about halfway through, I'm hanging, you hook to the tree and you stand on this platform, and I'm hanging 60 stories in the air. And the guide is right next to me, and the other 4 or 5 people are coming down. And the guide standing next to me, he looks really young. He's in charge of our life. And the whole time I'm thinking, man, this guy looks young, and he's in charge of everything. There's nobody else in charge out there except for him. And I looked at him and I said, hey man, I go, how old are you? And he goes, 15. I go, what did you say? He goes, 17? Like that made it better. Oh, you're 17 years old. Okay, well, great. So we get done zip lining. Now we go back on to the horseback 1 hour, back onto the boat for 1 hour, and then we get on the bus. The bus takes off, but it rains 300 inches a year of rain there, and it got stuck in the mud. And everybody had to get out of the bus, and we're pushing the bus. And I don't remember reading that in the brochure, by the way, but we're pushing the bus, and mud is flying everywhere, and it's just stuck. You've ever done that before where you're just stuck in the mud? I thought about that when I thought about what I was going to share with you guys today, and I think sometimes that in our own life, we get stuck in the mud. We get stuck in a rut. We get stuck in a wall where it feels like I'm stuck in this wall or I'm stuck in this mud and I can't seem to get to the other side. We've all been there before. Let me show you what I mean. Here's something I call life before the wall. This is life before the wall. You're happy. Life is going good. You're making some money. Everything's great. Whatever. Life's going good. Relationship's going good. Then something happens. Something goes down. Maybe someone hurts you, offends you, bothers you. Maybe you get into debt. I don't know, whatever happens. Maybe growing up, something happened. And that puts you here. You go from a happy face to a sad face. Now you're kind of like stuck in the mud, but I call it stuck in the wall. It's the same thing, where you can't feel like I'm in debt and I can't seem to get to the other side. I'm really angry at my dad or my mom or my ex-wife or ex-husband for what they did to me, and I can't seem to get to the other side and forgive. I'm like stuck in the mud. I'm stuck in this wall, and I can't seem to get out, and I don't know. I'm not as far along in life as I should be, and I just can't seem to get out of there. We all get there. And then, here's the bottom line. At that point, you got two choices. You either A, stay stuck, which is not a good option, or B, get to the other side of the wall. But pay attention to this. You either stay stuck in that wall, you can't, I'm just stuck. I'm not making any progress. I'm still, whatever your thing is, or you get to the other side of the wall. But please understand, those are your only two choices, because there's no such thing as life before the wall anymore. Whatever happened to you happened. It's done. And now you got to decide today. You have to decide, do I want to stay addicted or do I want to get to the other side? Do I want to stay in debt or get to the other side? Do I want to stay bitter at that person from 10 years ago, or do I want to get to the other side? Do I want to stay in this job that seems like a dead end, or do I want to go back to school or do whatever I got to do? For some reason, we feel stuck and we got to get to the other side of the wall. In John chapter 5, if you got a Bible, go there. John chapter 5. If you don't have a Bible, next time at a hotel, get one. They're free. I steal them all the time. I sell them on eBay. It's a side hustle. John chapter 5. Here's the story. So Jesus, we're going to read it in just a moment, just so you understand the story. The Jewish festival is going on. Okay, I've been there. It's at the gates of Jerusalem, and there's a Jewish festival that goes on once a year. During the festival, Jesus visits the area, walks through the gates, and he goes over to an area called the Pool of Bethesda, which actually means the Pool of Mercy. It's just a little pool of water. I've been there. Literally, it's just a small pool of water. Okay, and then there's 5 covered porches. Okay, why is that important? Because people would lay under the porch and they would wait for the water to bubble. The angel would come and stir the water, it would bubble. They would get up from the porch, try to get over to the water. If they got to the water in time, it would heal them of whatever their sickness was. So people would wait around that pool of water trying to get better. Jesus walks into the gates of Jerusalem, goes to the right, stands there at the pool, and has a conversation with one of the dudes that are laying under the covered porch. And here's how the conversation goes with Jesus and him. First part of it, okay? Here we go. Afterward, Jesus returned to Jerusalem for one of the Jewish holy days. Inside the city of the sheep gate was the gate of Bethesda, which means the pool of mercy, with 5 covered porches. Remember, they lay under the porch to kind of get at, some shade and get away from the sun. Crowds of people, blind, lame, paralyzed, lay under the porch. One of the men laying there, come on, now help me out, had been sick for how long? Come on. 38 years. Okay, now stop in that thought process. He had been sick for 38 years. For 38 years, he has been sick. Now, it doesn't say that he'd been laying under the porch for 38 years, but let's say he's been doing it for 5 years. 5 times 365, over 1,500 times. 1,500 times. He would lay under the porch, wait for the water to bubble, try to get over to the water. He didn't make it in time. He'd come back, lay under the porch, at the end of the day, go home, come back out, do it again, didn't get to the water. 1,500 times. So here's the bottom line. The guy's been sick for 38 years. Hundreds of times he's tried to make it to this water that's supposed to heal him, and every time he doesn't make it in time. Here's my thought process. If I was looking at that guy, I'd be like, buddy, your system ain't working. You know what I mean? I'd be like, dude, you're not getting to the water in time. People are getting in your way. You need to push people out of the way. Maybe you need to lay near the water, whatever. But whatever you're doing, buddy, your system isn't working. And I think for you and I think you and I could apply that same concept. We get stuck in a rut, or as I call it, stuck in the wall. We get kind of stuck in this wall, and we're bitter and we're angry. And maybe we've been in debt for 10 years. Maybe we've been bitter for 5 years. Maybe we're still angry at what mom or dad did to us 29 years ago. And we're living, or we're not where we thought we would be in life, and we're stuck in this place. And let me tell you something. If you've been there a year, or you've been there 4 years, or you've been there 20 years, the system isn't working. Whatever you're doing personally and you're still stuck in the wall isn't working. It's the same thing with this guy. Hey, buddy, you've been out here 1,500 days straight in a row. You haven't been able to make it to the water. Your system isn't working. Here's the bottom line. Put it on the screen for me. You can't change your future until you disrupt your present. Do you catch that? You can't change your future until you disrupt your present. In other words, I want to get to the other side of the wall. I don't want to live in this bad place anymore. I want to get to the other side of the wall. But understand something. I can't get there until I disrupt my present. which means I don't know what it means for you. I can't get there until I get the counseling. I can't get there until I go back to school. I can't get there until I learn to forgive. Whatever the thing is, I can't get there. I've got to disrupt what I'm doing right now, because if I just keep doing the same thing, I'm going to get the same result. Every day for 1,500 days, this guy kept doing the same thing and getting the same result. And you and I can't do that, but yet we do. We do it all the time. I've written a bunch of books. No one ever reads them, but I got them. And I always sell one to my mom, so that's always a copy. But one of my books, for some reason, did really, really well, called Quit Church. And then the subtitle is Because Your Life Would Be Better If You Did. If you're a pastor and you write a book called Quit Church, Because Your Life Would Be Better If You Did, a lot of people think it's really negative. It's really not. It's really about getting out of the wall, get to the other side. Don't just go to church, go all in with Jesus, this whole thing. But the title shocked people. It shocked people so much that it did really, really well. Matter of fact, check this out. It went #1 on Amazon, #1 on Reddit. It was on Fox News and Friends. We were on TV. We were doing interviews. It was crazy. For like 3 weeks, it was out of control. When it went on Fox News, in 1 hour, we had 100,000 emails come in. And people were just, some people were really nice, and some people were like, what a lousy title. You're a horrible pastor. I'm like, oh, God bless America. And but anyway, so it's all going great. So anyway, bottom line is, I get off the plane. Well, it's all going good. Late at night in Dallas, Texas. I get off the plane. I get onto the shuttle, to the hotel shuttle, and it's taking me to the hotel. And I'm sitting there. Okay, and this is when the book's all hot and doing really well, and it's several years ago, and I'm sitting there, and I'm returning emails, and the two ladies in front of me, I don't know who they are, but I can tell they're Christian, and they're talking back and forth. One of them says to the other one, hey, I'm sitting right behind them, hey, have you heard of this book? And the other lady goes, what book? And she goes, oh, it's right here, and she holds it up on her phone, she goes, Quit Church. And I lean back, and I look over, and I'm like, oh, that's my book. What are the odds that I would be sitting behind them? Right? And I'm just sitting there quietly, and the other lady goes, Quit Church? What kind of book is that? I don't know. It's supposed to be some guy wrote it. What guy? Some guy from Southern California. A guy from Southern California, what did he do? Apparently, he's a pastor. And I quote, she goes, he's not a pastor. He's an idiot. And I'm sitting right behind them. You can't write this stuff. You know what I'm saying? And they got so worked up. Oh, that's the problem with America. Because anybody says that's the problem with America clearly has answers. And they're going back and forth, back and forth. They got so wound up. They're like talking to each other. They look back and they invite me into the conversation. This is so good. And they're like, can you believe it? And I said, what? What are you guys talking about? I'm just back here praying and fasting. And she goes, what are you doing? Can you believe it? And I'm like, what? She goes, we're talking about this book. And I'm like, what book? She holds it up on her phone. She goes, it's called Quit Church, written by a pastor. Can you believe that's what it's come to in America? And she's just going off. And I'm like, wow, that's crazy. And she goes, have you heard of the book? And I said, I have. I've heard of it. And she goes, have you read the book? That's when I dropped it. I said, I'll give you one better than that. I wrote it. And the other lady goes, that's not true. She's Googling. I know what she's doing. She's looking for the Quit Church author picture. She puts it up next to my head, just kind of compare the pictures. And she realizes it's me. And then here comes the apologies. They're like, oh, we're so sorry. Had we known you were here, we wouldn't have talked bad about you. Spoken like a true believer. We would have talked behind your back like God intended. And so anyway, we get off the shuttle, we go check into the hotel, and there's a bunch of people in line. I'm standing behind them, and they're yakking away. Well, the one lady begins to tell me all the challenges that she's had. You could tell she was stuck in that rut, stuck in that wall. I said, I could tell. And she said, yeah. She goes, well, my life's been pretty bad. 3 years ago, I divorced my husband. He was very, very abusive, would beat me all the time, blah, blah, blah. She went on and on and on, telling me all this stuff. I said, ma'am, you should read the book. I had a copy there. I said, here, just read the book. And I go, it'll help you get to the other side of the wall. You'll know what I mean, just getting to the other side when you read the book. And then I said, and here's my email. If you need anything, just let me know. Fast forward to 2 years later, I get an email out of nowhere. Hey, would you come and speak to my, it says, Dear Pastor Chris, I was wondering if you'd come and speak to my leadership team. I don't know if you remember me. And I'm like, oh, I remember you. You're the encouraging lady. And she goes, I don't know if you remember me, but would you come and speak? So long story short, I find out that her leadership team, she lives about an hour away from where I live. And we met in Dallas, Texas, but she lived in California. So I went and met with 25 of her leaders. I didn't even know what they were about. Come to find out, watch this. She After reading the book, she realized she was stuck in the wall in bitterness and in anger and resentment and in not getting anywhere in life. You know what she did in the last 2 years? She went and got counseling so she could learn to forgive. She went back to school and became a licensed minister. She opened up a home for men that are addicted and a home for women who are battered. And that was her leadership team. I got done speaking. She came up to me and we're talking. I said, I'm so proud of you. It's unbelievable how your life turned around. She leaned in. She goes, I got to the other side of the wall. And that's exactly what you and I need to do today. It's like, man, I don't know what reason we all get there. I got there. We've been there before. But we got to somehow get to the other side of the wall. We've got to, you know what she did? She disrupted her present so her future would change. I got to get counseling. I got to go back to school. I got to forgive. I got to get my life better. And she did it, and all of a sudden, everything began to change. You can't change your future until you're willing to disrupt your present. Now, let's go back to the story, okay? Jesus walks up. The dude's been laying there. How many years has he been laying there? We just read it. 38 years. Okay, let's go back to the story. When Jesus saw him, he knew he'd been ill for a long time. We know he'd been ill for 38 years. Would you like to get well? That is an easy question. Do you see what Jesus says? Jesus says to him, hey, goes up to this guy, been sick for 38 years, been coming out to this water all this time. It's not working, his system. Jesus says, would you like to get well? Folks, that is the easiest question on the planet. It's not theological. It's not deep. It's not super spiritual. It's just, do you want to get well? Yes or no? It's such an easy question. Now, what's funny to me is, or interesting to me really, is not Jesus's question, because it's so easy. But what's really interesting to me is not the question, it's the man's response. Because the man's response, hang with me now, the man's response shows me why he's still stuck in that wall. Why he can't get to the other side in his life. Why he's still there. Look at the man's answer. Help me out. First word, I. Second word is what? I what? I can't. First thing he says, do you want to get well? Yes or no? I can't. I didn't ask that. Do you want to get well? What was the first thing he was doing? He was going into excuses. All the reasons why he couldn't get to the other side of that wall in his life. I can't. Look what he says. The sick man said, for I have no one to put me in the pool when the water bubbles up. Read the white part for me. Someone, come on. Someone else always gets there ahead of me. Can you hear what the dude's saying? Hey, you know why I'm stuck in this place? It ain't my fault. Do you want to get well, yes or no? I can't, Jesus, because someone else always gets in the way. Something else is the problem. And I'm not the problem. Hey, I'm not the reason I'm here. Let me tell you why I'm here. It's someone else's fault. You see, here's the bottom line is, I think that the guy just kept telling, he couldn't answer a yes or no question because he kept telling himself the same lie over and over and over. I think you and I do the same thing. I think at some point we have to challenge the story we keep telling ourselves. Put it up there for me. We have to challenge the story we keep telling ourselves over and over and over. Hey, Chris, let me tell you why I'm still bitter. Because my dad from 20 years ago, my mom from 15 years ago, my ex-wife, my ex-husband, I didn't get the same education that my other friend had an opportunity. We have all these reasons why we're still addicted, why we're still struggling, why we're still in that wall, why our life isn't as good as we want it to be, and we're all coming up with these reasons, and I'm not saying they're not real, but listen to me. If all we do is come up with reasons, it's a way to justify our responsibility to those problems. Here's the thing. If you just come up with reasons, you'll never get to the other side. At some point, you got to say, okay, yeah, I might be in the wall because of my fault, someone else's fault. It really doesn't matter. What matters right now is I want to get to the other side. I don't want to be addicted anymore. I don't want to be bitter anymore. I don't want to be angry anymore. And I don't want to be in this position in my life anymore. I want to get to the other side of the wall. I want to get there. And at some point, you got to do that. You got to take the ownership, because if you don't take the ownership, and we don't like owning things. None of us like to own the responsibility. I remember a few years ago, I was speaking regularly at one of our largest campuses. And we have like 6 weekend services, lots of people that go there, blah, blah, blah. And I was speaking regularly because there were some problems there. Long story short, my wife calls me or texts me and she goes, hey, can you pick up these items from the grocery store on the way home? I'm like, sure. I stop at the grocery store on the way home that day, 5, 6 o'clock, whatever. I grab the items. I go up to the counter. The lady rings up the bill, and it's like $25.87 or whatever. And so I pull out my card. She says, you can't tap it, you got to swipe it. So I swipe the card, and it says from my ATM debit card, I swipe the card for the $25 at the grocery store, and it says declined. How many has that ever happened to you before? Come on, raise your hand. And what do? I don't know why. I got so much money. Pull out a receipt. Look, oh, this morning I was at the bank. I'm loaded, you know. And you know what the lady's thinking? Okay, loser, get out of line. You know what they're thinking? So I did the same thing we all do. I don't know why. I got plenty of money. Look at, I'm loaded. And she goes, well, I don't know, whatever, sir, but you got to get out of line because, you know, whatever. I go, just reset it. Let me do it one more time. I talked her into it. Boom, I slide it again. Decline. Now the line's forming. The manager comes over. It's this scene. And there's someone about 6 people back. They're like, Pastor Chris, is that you? I'm like, no, it's his twin brother, Craig. And I'm sitting there, and the manager's getting mad at me. I'm like, just swipe it, dude. I know I got money in the sure, you got to get out of line. Bah, bah, bah. Finally, I talk him into it. He goes to reset it. I grab my wallet. It's kind of underneath the counter. I grab my wallet. I open it up, and I realize at that moment I wasn't signing my or sliding my Chase Bank card. I was sliding my Chevron gas card the entire time. And so they didn't see it. So I switched over to my bank card. I swiped it, and it said approved. And the manager, sir, we're sorry. I said, I hope so. I have a reputation in this town. You guys got faulty equipment around here. I don't know what's going on. Now, I'm going to tell you straight up, and I know it's bad, and you're all going to judge me for it. I didn't tell them the truth. I just walked out thinking it was their fault because I'm thinking, I don't want to own that. Okay, I'm just telling you. And I think, you know, and that's probably not that big of a deal, but I think we actually do that a lot in our own lives. We don't want to own it. We don't want to own that, like, hey, man, I'm here because partly me, partly my mom, I'm dad. I'm here because of dad. I'm here because whatever reason we're there, could be someone else's fault, your fault, or a combination of the both. But the bottom line is, if you're stuck in a rut, stuck in that wall, you say, I can't get free of this. I can't get to the other side. My life isn't what it. If you can't do that, you got to take responsibility today. And so do I. And just say, I'm going to get to the other side. It's no one else's fault. I'm going to own it, and I'm going to get to the other side. Because let me tell you something. There is a God in heaven who is insanely in love with you. And he wants you to get to the other side of the wall. He loves you so much. He wants you to win. He wants you to exceed. He wants you to excel. I know what it's like to hurt. I know what it's like to be wounded. I know what it's like. I didn't grow up in a Christian home, you know, and me and my dad didn't have the best relationship. He passed away a few months ago. We ended up being fine, but it was very, very rough and very, very difficult. And I lived with a lot of that stuff for years. You know, I remember when I was 17, I started going to, when I was 15, I started going to a youth group. By the time I was 17, I knew I wanted to be in ministry. And I said, man, I'm gonna be in ministry. I'm 3 months away from graduating high school. I'm like, I'm gonna go to Bible college. I don't know how I'm gonna pay for it. My parents aren't gonna pay for it, but I'm gonna go to Bible college somehow. I was going to a youth group by myself just because I just found God. And I just wanted to give him a chance in my life. By the time I was 17, I knew I was gonna be in ministry. I was standing in the hallway at our little house, 900 square foot home. 7 of us lived there. I was the youngest of five kids and mom and dad. And 3481 Grant Street, and I'm standing there, and my dad comes walking by. He goes, son, you're going to graduate in about a month or two. What are you going to do with your life? I said, Dad, you know I became a Christian. I'm going to follow God for the rest of my life. I am going to go to Bible college somehow, and I am going to write books, start churches, and try to change the world for Jesus. And I really wanted to do that. And I'll never forget my dad. My dad looked at me in that hallway at 3481 Grant Street. I could take you to the exact spot we were standing. And he says, son, you'll never make it. You don't have what it takes. You're no good. And I went inside my room. I sat there, cried a little bit, and I felt like God got my attention real quick. He said, stop the crying for a second. How you interpret this moment will affect the rest of your life. And this is why I felt like God said to me, Chris, you have 2 choices right now. You either believe what your earthly father says about you, or you believe what your heavenly father says about you. I chose to believe what my heavenly father said about me. And I don't know what put you in there or what's going on inside of your life. I don't know. But all I know is getting to the other side and saying, I don't want to live in this wall, in this rut, as we called it before. I don't want to live there anymore. I want to get to the other side. And sometimes we get stuck in there. And man, doubt fills us. I can't get better in my life. Fear fills us. Maybe this is the best it'll get. We have let doubt get in the way. Isn't that true? We let fear get in the way. We let insecurity get in the way too, don't we? Do you know what we really let get in the way? Other people's opinions. You ever notice that? Here's what I've noticed about people. People will always pull down your dreams to a level that's comfortable for themselves. You know why they do that? Because your desire for excellence threatens their mediocrity. And we want to get to the other side, but it's just difficult to do that. And I'm telling you right now, you got to own it. You got to challenge the story. Okay, it's this person's fault. It's that person's fault. Forget all of that and just say, I want to get to the other side. I don't want to live here anymore. Now, let's go back to the story. John chapter 5, verse 8. Let's pick it up where we left off. Here it is. Jesus told them, stand up, pick up your mat, and walk. Instantly, the man was healed. Instantly, he rolls up his mat and began walking. Now, why is this so important? This, to me, is almost sort of funny because the man says, I can't. Hey, you want to get well? Yes or no? I can't. Someone else's fault. It's not my fault. Jesus doesn't even acknowledge the man's excuses. Did you notice that? He doesn't even go, well, man, I really understand. He just goes, just stand up and walk, would you? I love it. I love it. It's like, yeah, I heard all the excuses, and not that I don't care, but that doesn't really matter. Just stand up and walk. I wonder if Jesus would come, and not right now, in his own presence, in his own reckless love for you, put his arm around you, and we could say, here's all the reasons, here's all the hurt, here's all the problems, here's all the excuses I have, and I wonder if at the end of it, he'd just look at you and say, just get to the other side of the wall. Just get unstuck. Start moving to where you need to go in life. I think he would do that to you and I today. I believe that with all my heart that he would. Because here's the bottom line. You don't always have the power to control, but you always have the power to surrender. You don't have the power to control. I couldn't control what happened with my dad and the things he would say. You can't control everything that happened to you, why you feel stuck sometimes in that wall, in that rut. You don't always have the power to control, but you do always have the power to surrender. I can surrender to Jesus and I can just give him a chance and let him do something amazing in my life. I can give it all. I can go all like the lady from the Quit Church book. It's like, I'm going back to school. I'm getting counseling. I'm becoming a licensed minister and I'm going to get busy with my life. She could have just kept working retail for the rest of her life. Not that that's a bad gig, but she was like, nope, I'm doing something different. That lady got millions of dollars in grants. She's opening up homes because she decided, that's it. I'm done. I don't want to be stuck anymore. I'm getting to the other side. And it was just a decision that she had to make. She couldn't control every reason. Every time her husband hit her, she couldn't control that. What she could control was she going to surrender to Jesus and everything he had for her life? That's what it really came down to. And that's the same thing you and I have to come to. Where are we going to be in all of this? And how are we going to be affected in all of this? I want to wrap it up with this, and then actually, I'd love to, real quick, I'll go ahead and do it right now. If you have a phone, could you pull out your phone real quick before we finish up this last story? That's the thing you've been acting like you're taking notes on, but you're actually texting. I want to give you a free book, absolutely free. It's unboxed. And one of our leaders wrote it. It's an amazing book about unboxing your life, getting out of that box, getting out of that wall. It's what it's all about. All you get your name and your phone number or your name and your email or whatever. It'll download a free book to you. It's like, I don't know, $25 on Amazon. I just want to give it to you as a gift today to New Life. So just do that. You can take care of that later, and then just put it. Everybody got that? And if you have any problem scanning that, just see me afterwards. But I want to give you that free book. It's just, I just want to bless you today. But go ahead and take that back off the screen if we could, and then hopefully you got that. Now listen to me. I want to wrap it up with this, and I'm going to turn it back over to one of the team members who's ever coming up next. But listen, this is important. When my kids were little, they were 10 and 9 years old. They were 15 months apart, my kids. And when my kids were only 15 months apart, they were about 10 and 9 years old, and I love running. And I know what you're thinking. Some of you are looking up here going, if you love running, keep at it. You don't look good. And but I love running, and I run about 5-6 miles a day. And I remember my kids are 10 and 9 years old, and I'm like, I'm going to go for a run. And my son and my daughter are like, we'll go with you, Dad. And that's the worst thing in the world. I love my kids, but I'm like, oh my gosh, I just want to run. I don't want to have to stop and slow down and look at every bug on the ground. And so my 10-year-old daughter, she gets her little scooter, one of those little scooters, and she puts her helmet on. And she's like, I'm going to go with you, Dad. And then my son gets his bike. He puts his helmet on. I'll go with you, too. I'm like, all right, here we go. So we go for a run. And we're running. And my son is in front of me, and he's going up and down up the curve. Look, Dad. Look, Dad. Look, Dad. He's doing this whole thing. I'm like, okay, and I'm running. My daughter's behind me on her little scooter. She's trying to keep up like this, And she's behind me. And you know how you're on a sidewalk, and there's gaps in the sidewalk? Well, if your little wheel on a scooter gets caught in the gap, you're going to flip over. So I'm running along, and I'm like, watch the gap. Watch the gap, and trying to help her not make sure she doesn't wreck or whatever. And my son's ahead of me, I'm there, my daughter's behind me, watch the gap, watch the gap. I must have forgot to say watch the gap or something, because all of a sudden I heard, and I turn around and she's laying there, and crying, and there's a little bit of blood on her knees, and she fell, and she's screaming, and I run over there, oh, Gracie, my little daughter, her name's Gracie, I pick her up, I look at her, I start rubbing on the little stuff off her knee, and my son comes pulling up, she looks at me, and he goes, Mom's gonna kill you for this, Dad. You are responsible for this. And so I'm like, oh, okay, let's just go back home. We'll just go back home. And my daughter's like, no, Dad, I can do it. No, we'll go back home. No, I can do it. Okay. So my son takes off again. I start running again. My daughter's behind me. She's 10 years old. I will never forget what she said. 10 years old, behind me on the scooter as I am running. She said, be careful which way you go, Daddy, because I'm following you. Whew. It made me think about as a parent, but it also makes me think about this moment right here. Hey, if you're stuck in the wall for some reason, I don't know what got you there, but you better be careful which way you go, because people are following you. Kids are watching you. Are you going to get to the other side? You got to watch that. I kept telling my daughter, watch the gap. There's a problem here. Watch the gap. I think this morning, and as an alert to you, that maybe you've been in here for a year or 20 years, and you thinking, man, I don't want to be stuck over here anymore. I want to get unstuck today. I want to get to the other side today. You need to do that for you. You need to do that for the people that are watching you. Be careful which way you go, because I'm watching you. And you need to do that because God's got so much more for you once you break through to the other side. And I want to encourage you to get to the other side. Get to the other side of this and watch what God will do. I want to pray with you, and then one of your staff members will come, but let me just pray with you. Would you close your eyes with me? Let's just respect the privacy and moment of one another, and with your eyes closed and nobody looking around, we can just respect the privacy of each other. But how many would just say right now, man, Pastor Chris, I feel stuck in a wall. I feel stuck in that rut. Maybe it's because of bitterness or anger. Maybe it's because of debt. Maybe it's because I'm just not where I thought I would be in life. Maybe addiction, whatever it is. Okay, I don't need to know the reason. That's between you and Jesus. But how many would just say, I feel stuck, but I don't want to be here anymore? Would you just raise up your hand? I'd love to pray for you all over this place. Come on. Wow, lots of hands. Yeah. Today's your day to break free. Today's your day to break free. Anybody else? Come on. Yeah. You can put your hand down. Now, let me ask one more question, because we're going to say a corporate prayer together in just a moment. How many would say, Chris, I'm not where I should be with Jesus today. I came here because someone invited me. I haven't been to the church in a while. Maybe I come all the time, but for whatever reason, I am not where I should be with Jesus. My heart is just not where it should be. Man, if my life was to be taken later today, I don't know what eternity would look like for me. And I want to make sure my life's right with Jesus. I'd love to pray for you. If that's you, would you slip up your hand and just say, I just want to make things right with Jesus. Thank you. And you, and you, and you, and all over this place. Thank you so much. Wow. Thank you so much. I'm going to lead you in a prayer. If you raise your hand because you're like, I want to get to the other side, or if you raise your hand because like, I'm not where I should be with Jesus, we're going to say one prayer that's going to kind of sum it up all together. And I'd love for you to pray this prayer out loud with me. Would you say this prayer out loud with me? Say, Jesus. Come on, say it like you mean it. Everybody in the place. Come on, let's all support those that just raised their hand. Say, Jesus, today, I give you my life. Wash me clean of all I've done wrong. I want to serve you for the rest of my life. Sometimes I get stuck, but I don't want to be stuck. I want to get to the other side. I want everything that you have for my life. Today is a new day, not just another Sunday. Today's the day where I go after God and all he has for me for the rest of my life. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thanks for tuning in to New Life Sermon Series Online. If you're blessed by these messages and are interested in helping spread the Word of God to others, make an investment today. You can give at newlifechurchsf.org. If you have a story or a testimony to share, let us know on our website as well. We hope you have a blessed day and enjoy today's message by Pastor Alex.